Okay, here we go. Done all my cutting up now. What we're going to do is make, or at least make the, not the whole thing, but the covers for a book like this, or a folio like this. Beauty of these is, I turn it over at the back, these unscrew, they come apart, and you can take the pages out. Anything that you want to add, you can add. If when you take out, you can. And you get damaged, you can replace. So it's quite flexible. This has just got some Happy Snaps, family Happy Snaps in this one. And it's designed to fit an A4 sheet of paper. So there's an A4 sheet of paper, fits comfortably inside the size of it. You can have ones that, like this, different size admittedly, that have the hinges, instead of going out, they have them folded in so that they come inside the book. Matters not, the process of making them is identical. There's no difference in the process of making them. So what we're going to do today is one for A4, this size, and that's what you saw me cutting up in the opening bit. Two sizes. One here is for the external hinges. In other words, these are visible on the outside. And the other one is the sizes for internal hinges. So hinges that fold up and go inside. And clearly the only difference here, if you look at it, the gap between the two boards is the same. This size here is the same, so that's the width of that is the same. The width of the entire book is 220 millimeters, that's the same. The only difference is the length of the main board. Because clearly if you are making one like this, with the hinge external, the paper fits within the hinge and fits within the board. The moment you say, right, I'm going to fold my hinge inside, your paper starts there and it overhangs the end. So you have to make this board larger, hence B dimensions 307 millimeters instead of 280 millimeters. You can make them for any size you like, but those are the ones I use for an A4 sheet. So let's just move that out of the way and move that one out of the way. We'll keep that bit of board. Now, okay, so admittedly this is a different colour, but that's a finished board before it's been used. And you can see there's the hinge. It can fold inside or it can stay out. It's entirely up to you. So the making of them is identical. So I'm going to make another one of those. You need the main board and you need a hinge. So main board, you need a hinge. You then need one piece of cloth that's going to go on the inside and one larger piece of cloth which is going to go on the outside. And we'll make it now using those bits and pieces. So let's put the inside out of the way and we'll get the outside cloth and lay that down there. Now you can do this by eye, it does not have to be millimeter accurate. Do it by eye and it will be fine. So bits I'm going to need for this, tools I'm going to need for this. I'm going to need either a knife or some scissors. I'm going to need a pencil. I'm going to need what's known as a bone folder. You're going to need a corner piece like that, which I'll explain in a moment. And eventually you're going to need a hole cutter. Over and above that, then you're going to need some glue and a brush to paste the glue on with. Okay, all of these things will become clear as we go through. So pop those to one side out of the way. We'll make a start. Now, put it slightly closer to me. You want to put them on there so that when it's finished, just like this one, it can fold in if necessary, but certainly gives a nice loose hinge so that it can move. And to do that, I keep offcuts of board. The same thickness as the board I'm using here. This is a 3mm piece of board, so the thickness of it is 3mm. And if you're going to fold it over, like that, you're going to need to accommodate the gap there, 2 thicknesses of board to lie inside it. So these 2 offcuts sit in there to give you a rough measure as to where to put the hinge piece. And it is a rough measurement, don't worry about it being too accurate. So that's the place. You've got a roughly even gap around it. Now just mark it out with a pencil. And this is going to be your guide for gluing. Nothing else, just gluing at the minute. Gives you a rough guide to where you're going to apply the glue. So let's take those out of the way and I'll put them to one side. You get your glue. This is PVA starch glue. And just small amounts of glue onto the cloth, not onto the board, because you don't need much glue here. And you put it on the board first, it would soak into that board before you even get to finish gluing, and you wouldn't be able to finish the job. So I'm dabbing on small amounts of glue. It's not huge amounts. It's not like a piece of furniture where you've got to hold something in position. This is only going to stick to a piece of cardboard. The more you put on, the more mess you make later. So just keep it roughly to the edges and dab on. Using the guidelines, put your board down on there against the ruled line and the hinge. And if you need to, use those offcuts again, just to make sure that you have given it enough space, not only for the gap of the board folding over, but also cloth will go inside there as well. Right, now this is where you now need this, the bone folder. You can use anything really, but these thin bone folders, they're only cheap, about £5, and you push out from the centre so that any air gaps are forced out and you get an even pressure on. And you can see where the hinge is there. And just go to the edges and make sure it's nice and smooth. Now again, I'm rushing this. I would take a little bit more time normally. And hopefully, we haven't got large amounts of glue. We haven't. That's good. We haven't got lots of glue pushing out. Now, we need to do these edges that fold in on all sides. And this is where this comes in. Because when you're folding in the edges, you don't want, for instance, if I go to the centre, I don't want a large amount of cloth getting in the way of a corner there. So you're going to trim off the edges. And to do it, you use this. This is just made up of 3mm board, same thickness board that I've got here. So if you're using a different thickness, you'd make one yourself. Right angle piece there, I've got a piece of A4 paper, put it down and marked around it, with a 3mm gap at the top. So I tuck that A4 piece into there and draw a line. And that's where I'm going to cut and leave that little bit there, 3mm gap, and I'll explain that as we go through why you do that. So tuck it over there if I can. That's it. Bring it back to the centre. Where are we now? Tuck it over there. Same for that one. And the same for that one. That's it. Tuck it over there. Draw a line. And that's where we're going to cut off. I can use scissors, I can use a knife, it's entirely up to you. And let's get rid of those extra bits. We don't need them. Now you can see you've got all around the corners, you've got that 3mm gap. And if it's 2mm board, you need a 2mm gap, etc. Okay, so now we're going to glue the edges in. Again, same process. PVA starch glue in this instance. Just dab it on, tuck it so it goes into the gap, into the edge there. Now don't worry if it spreads over onto the other side. It's water-based and it cleans away quite well. And that's why we have a slightly damp cloth always at hand, which I didn't show you earlier. So let's just scrub that over. There we go. Let's take the spare bit of paper out of the way. And now I work from the long edges first. You can do whichever edge you choose, but I work from the long edge first. So using the bone folder, pull it in. You can be quite tough with it. The book cloth is quite strong. Quite strong. Pull it in and stick it down. Pull it in and stick it down. And if it isn't right, you can move it. It doesn't matter. It's really quite tough stuff, this book cloth. Now, over here, this is another use for these spare offcuts of paper. board, sorry, you push it in there to make sure you've got a good gap in there so that the hinge will work properly, and possibly if you're using an internal hinge it will fold over. Turn it round now, so push those bits in again, get it to stretch. The book cloth will stretch. You get glue on your hands, just wipe it off. If it feels sticky, just wipe it. It is water based, as I say. Tuck those 3mm bits in. Now do the edges, and you'll see that now on the corner you have a tucked in piece without an extra flap here making thickness, but you haven't got an open cut. And that's why you leave those 3mm bits on, or 2mm if that's the board thickness you're using. And the same over here. Tuck it in. Tuck it in. You can be quite brutal. I'm actually putting quite a lot of pressure on here. And you would now go and leave that to set normally. Now, back with the paper again, because I'm now going to glue up. I would normally, as I say, have left that under weight. I would have put that there, perhaps a book on it, and something flat, and put some weights on it to keep it flat and let it set. So let's start again with the glue, and this time it's just all over, no edges to do or wait for. Wipe my hand. Right, paper out of the way. This hinge, starting at the leading edge, not the hinge edge now, and work towards the other edge, roughly a 5mm gap all the way around. As I say, it doesn't really matter too much whether you're accurate or not, as long as it's covering the original joins. Work out again from the outside, from the inside to the outside with a bone folder, and tuck it right down into that hinge gap. Let's move it around now so you can see more clearly, and get those offcuts. Force them in there, force them down, and this bit then should stay down. This is the most difficult bit to stick down because of the desire for it to straighten out again when you're trying to force it in a different direction. But be persistent. Book cloth is tough stuff. Don't worry about it ripping, because it's highly unlikely to rip. But you do want that gap in there, and very importantly, so you can fold it over if necessary. That's fine. So what I shall do now is put this on a board, under a board, sorry, with some pressure on it, and let it dry. And I'll come back and do the next bit. Here we are. I have my two sample boards which I made earlier. They need a bit of a clean, but I can deal with that once I've finished them. They're going to have their holes put in there for the hinges to go through. The hinges are 15mm ones in this case. You can get lots of different sizes. Have one column that goes through, or pillar, so column screws or pillar screws, and the screw that holds them in place. So you need two of those, and you need the holes to go through. I've already measured up. I've got another piece of card cut exactly the same as a hinge, and I've got the holes measured out to where I want them. So this is quite straightforward now. Let's move those out of the way. I put on my template onto there where I want it to be, and I get my hole punch, which is this, using those guides, and push through and cut through into the board. And you can see now that it's gone all the way through, keeping that in the same place. Do the second one. Push down, it'll go all the way through, and there's your holes. Straightforward. Those go through. And you would use the same process on the other piece of board. Take that one, we'll turn that one over so that we've got the two inside faces facing each other. Turn it over, and I know we've got no content at the minute, so the screws look enormously long, but they are at the minute. Once you put the pages in, the content in, then of course the screws hold in place. Let's just temporarily put that on, just to show you the finished item. There we go. So there we have it. Both sides, hinged book. You can get a good load of pages I should say, inside there. And that's it. Straightforward. 2 pieces of board, main board, hinge, book cloth on the outside, book cloth on the inside, 2 holes and the screw to go through. Ends up, once you put the pages in, as a working book.